Hi, Taylor T. Carlson, and I'm back with another video for you. It's been a while since I've done my last vinyl haul, but I'm back and I've got plenty more to show off. I actually just did a trade-in over at Zia a few weeks ago and bought a few things, so some nice additions to the collection. I am going to show off a few things here that you probably wouldn't normally associate me with listening to, but again, even though I'm more of a rock and metal guy, I'm certainly a fan of all genres. Why don't we go ahead and get started? First of all, this is the Bad Channels movie soundtrack. It's an obscure movie from the early 90s. Blue Oyster Cult did the score and a few of the tracks that are on the proper soundtrack. Also included on here is songs by other artists, including Fair Game, which was a short-lived supergroup that featured Ron Keel, the singer from the band Keel. Here's the inner gatefold. I've never actually watched this movie. I've heard things that aren't necessarily so good, but you have to appreciate the design of this vinyl package. It looks very nice. I think I got this off Amazon for under 20 bucks, which is surprising considering it's a double album. One album has the soundtrack, and the disc that's got the soundtrack on it. Give me a second to get this out of here. The soundtrack disc is this sort of sky blue color, which is pretty cool. The soundtrack is on there, and then the last track of the soundtrack, and then Blue Oyster Cult's score on the second disc, and this, of course, is just a traditional black vinyl. So I guess the colors black and blue are certainly appropriate for those guys. Next up, and here's one you probably would never expect me to show off on my channel, Madonna, the Who's That Girl soundtrack. Yes, I don't really care for a lot of Madonna's real-life activities, but she's got a lot of music I quite like. And this soundtrack isn't Madonna only. It's actually got some other artists on here. There's things from Club Nouveau, Scritti Politti, and even Duncan Fare, who was the singer for the 70s rock band Rabbit. He actually lives here in Vegas, and I've seen him a few times. Cool guy. And one thing I particularly like about this record, the disc itself is clear. I love clear and colored vinyls, and this was a nice addition to the collection. Keeping in with the same theme right now, sticking with Madonna, this is the I'm Breathless album. This is the music that she did or that was inspired by the movie Dick Tracy. Again, third thing in a row, never actually seen the movie, but this is kind of an interesting album because she does a lot of songs that are like, 40s, big band, swing, Broadway type songs. So it's a far cry from what you'd normally associate with Madonna, but there's some good stuff on here. The song Vogue is what this album is best known for. I got this at Barnes & Noble because they had an exclusive yellow-colored vinyl. That's slightly transparent, pretty cool looking. I wonder if they went with yellow because there's a song in here called I'm Going Bananas. Regardless, an underrated entry in the Madonna canon, one that doesn't get talked about too much outside of its hit single. Next up, and I got this used over at Record City the other day, this is the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. Primarily known for the disco songs from the Bee Gees. There's a few things from other artists on there like Walter Murphy, Yvonne Elliman, Casey and the Sunshine Band, The Tramps, Kool and the Gang. Obviously, I'm not a huge disco fan, but there's a few tracks from that era I quite like. And these songs are pretty much the ones that made the Bee Gees a household name, although they actually had some pre-disco stuff that was really good that I recommend hunting down. I actually prefer those songs to these ones. And this is a double vinyl set. I actually got this in the clearance bin over there. Still got to test it out, but anyway, moving on down the list. And I think it's kind of a funny coincidence all the movie soundtracks are in a row. I found this in the clearance bin at Record City also. This is the soundtrack to The Producers, the first feature film directed by Mel Brooks, starring Gene Wilder and Zero Mostel. One of my personal favorites from the 60s, one of the most hilarious comedies of all time. Very politically incorrect. I'm actually quite surprised that they could make this movie. It almost wasn't released because of its subject matter. I won't go into that here, but Peter Sellers was one of the supporters who watched the movie and helped actually get it released. This album has a combination of dialogue from the film as well as the music. So you got numbers like Prisoners of Love and Springtime for Hitler. It's a good time. If you haven't seen the film, I strongly recommend it. Very funny. And actually, we got another soundtrack. I think I got this from Zia in one of their used bins. This is the Vision Quest soundtrack. Again, another instance where I've never actually seen the movie, but there's some great music on here. You got Journey, John Waite, Madonna, Don Henley, Dio, Red Rider, Sammy Hagar, Foreigner. Yeah, there's the back cover. Got a nice look at the track list. Maybe one day I'll actually hunt down this movie and give it a watch, but regardless, soundtrack is pretty damn good. Okay, and moving on down the list, one of my personal all-time favorite artists, George Harrison. Everyone knows him for the Beatles, but he had a great solo career. And Somewhere in England, this came out in 1981. This album's best known for the song All Those Years Ago. Here's the back cover. Yeah, George Harrison's easily my favorite of the Beatles. They were all very talented, and sadly we lost him about 20 years ago. Here's the inner sleeve. I definitely want to hunt down more George Harrison on vinyl, so I'm going to put that on my to-do list. Next up, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Works Volume 2. Found this in one of the clearance bins at Zia. This was only like $1. But this was sort of an odds and ends collection of a lot of like single and non-album tracks that didn't make it onto the albums. Works Volume 1 was actually more of a coherent album with each member of the band getting their own vinyl side to do whatever they wanted with. But again, this is really just the odds and ends collection. So you have tracks on here like Brain Salad Surgery, oddly enough not on the album of the same name. Got Maple Leaf Rag, the old Scott Joplin tune. They do a pretty traditional cover of that. I Believe in Father Christmas, Greg Lake's classic Christmas song, and even a cover version of the old tune, Show Me the Way to Go Home. Not the strongest entry in the Emerson, Lake and Palmer catalog by any means, but I do want to get more of their stuff because they put out some great progressive rock over the years. Another entry I just got, ELO, Electric Light Orchestra. This is the Time album from 1981. Concept album, very underrated. This one came like right after Discovery, which had some of the big, more disco-inspired hits. And then this came before, their last few albums they put out before the original tenure of the band ended around 1986. And this one had the original lyric sheet and liner notes intact, which is kind of nice. Looks like somebody actually wrote on this, but as long as I have a playable version of this album on vinyl that doesn't skip, I'm happy. Very underrated classic hard rock band. This is Shooting Star. Heard of these guys years ago, but never really had any of their stuff, but I picked this up not too long ago and gave it a listen. These guys have some great music out, and I do want to see if they've got anything else in their discography potentially worth hunting down, because this is a fantastic album. This was actually produced by Gus Dudgeon. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the last name right, but he's probably most famous for his work with Elton John, so the fact that he produced this should give it a little bit of gravity. Next up we have X, Los Angeles. Great, very underrated punk rock group. Came out in the early 80s, and these guys, their albums were actually produced by Ray Manzarek, the keyboardist from The Doors, who also played keyboards on their albums. These guys were prominently featured in the punk rock documentary, The Decline of Western Civilization, and this is a fantastic first album with songs like Johnny Hit and Run Pauline and Nausea, the latter one of which is actually played over the opening credits of The Decline of Western Civilization. Great movie, definitely check it out if you get a chance. It was reissued by Shout Factory a few years ago in a box set with the other movies. And there's the inner sleeve artwork, there's the lyric sheet. I like how this almost looks kind of like handwritten and the fonts change. Gives it a little more of that punk rock flair. Very underrated band, and I believe they're still active, because I think one of my Facebook friends posted a picture with Exene Cervenka a few years ago, but again, great group. Definitely check them out if you get the chance. And the last thing I picked up was this, David Bowie, Aladdin Sane. This is a reissue. I think this is actually an import because it says Parlophone on the back. I know that's a British company. I think they handled some of the early Beatles stuff as well, but Again, this has a 2013 digital remaster and 2015 Parlophone copyright, so yeah, definitely a very cool import. The band on this one consists of David Bowie and Mick Ronson, of course, and then T.J. Boulder, a.k.a. Trevor Boulder. He later played bass for Uriah Heep. Mick Woody Woodmansey on drums. He's the last surviving member of the classic Ziggy Stardust Spiders from Mars lineup. And great all-around lineup, some great tunes on this one. Probably will forever be known for the song The Gene Genie, but then, like, Driving Saturday is one of my personal favorite Bowie tunes. It was actually covered by Def Leppard on a covers album they did about 10, 15 years ago. Got the inner sleeve here. I'm not totally sure what Mr. Bowie was going for here. Not really sure what he was ever going for, but I absolutely adore the guy's music, and this is a fantastic record. Here's the inner sleeve with the lyrics, and probably the best thing about this reissue, something that I absolutely adore, as I stated earlier, I love colored vinyl, and this one's on a silver disc. You can never get too much David Bowie, and I'll certainly be adding more of his stuff to my catalog as time goes by. I actually got my girlfriend the remastered reissue of the Ziggy Stardust album a few weeks back. Have you made any great vinyl finds wherever you live? Ordered anything online interesting? Comment down below and let me know what you've gotten on vinyl lately. Also remember to subscribe to this channel for more content because I'm always posting videos. And give this video a like if you found it helpful or interesting. I'm Taylor T. Carlson, and I'll see you next time.